G'day everyone, this is Tom from Team NWP, and want to bring you guys a deck discussion slash profile-ish video. This is not exactly a fully set in stone build for me, but if it gives you guys a bit of a starting point to go with on how this deck works, then happy days. So this is the Syn Shenron archetype, or the Xeno Syn Shenron archetype from set 14. It is a bit of a weird one. It's a bit of a mill strategy, but it's kind of mill control. It's weird. You'd think it'd be simple with a lot of the battle cards and their skills doing the exact same thing, but it's actually quite a complicated deck because sequencing and how everything resolves is actually quite complicated, and took me a bit to get my head wrapped around, and I'm still learning a few of the little nuances as we go. Now we'll start with the leader. Annoyingly, Deck Planet has the image backwards, so this is the unawakened side, but that's the awakened side. Now, with both sides, it is a blocker. The synergy there is with your Unison card, and we'll get to that in a sec. Now, on the front side, it's when you activate a Shadow Dragon extra card from your hand, you and your opponent place the top card of your deck into the drop area. So, in a nutshell, you activate an extra card, you and your opponent mill a card. And that's not once per turn, so if you do it multiple times a turn during your opponent's turn, keeps happening. Second auto is when you attack, you discard a black Shadow Dragon card, then you draw one card and switch this card to active mode. Now the annoying thing is choosing the one black Shadow Dragon card to discard is cost. So if you have a badass hand and have no black Shadow Dragon cards in your hand, which if that's happening, you probably need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how many black Shadow Dragon cards you have. But essentially, if you haven't got any targets to discard, then you can't activate the auto, and you don't get to draw and switch back to active mode. Now, your awakened condition is when you have either 4 or less life, or you have 7 or more black Shadow Dragon cards in your drop area, and you're an untap 1, draw 1 leader. So we can see that the idea is for you and your opponent to mill, 1, because milling your opponent is fun, and 2, so you can awaken. And there's a bit of synergy there with how your Toa Unison works. Now, before we get to the Unison, we'll go to the skills on the awakened side. So again, you're still a blocker. Now the auto on this side is when you activate a Shadow Dragon extra card, it's just your opponent that's placing the top card of your deck. So you awaken, you no longer mill, just your opponent mills. And then we're having a good time, we're having a good day. And then the other auto is a bit different to the front. It's just when you attack, you draw a card, this card gets 5k power for the turn, and then you switch this card to active mode at the end of the turn. So a much stronger leader on the awaken side, and we want to awaken as quickly as possible. Not just for the 2 autos, but for this activate main / battle, because this is where the deck gets absolutely bonkers. So it's an activate main / battle once per turn, and it's a spirit boost 1, meaning we have to remove 1 marker from a Unison card in play. And we basically choose 1 Shadow Dragon extra card in our hand and activate its activate main / battle skill without paying its cost. So all of these extra cards, which we'll go through in a bit of detail in a sec, we can activate during our opponent's turn, during our turn, all without paying the cost by spirit boosting 1 marker from the Unison card. And we can be super disruptive, and it makes the deck very economical from an energy standpoint. So we can save all of our energy for our counters and everything like that we need to use, and then we can use spirit boosting to be disruptive and proactive with our extra cards. Now we'll jump into the Unison card and that skill. So here's where the synergy lies with the leader. So when the leader card activates the blocker skill, place the top card of your deck into the drop area, then add a marker to this card. So again, helping us awaken as quickly as we can by us milling. Then we've got a +1, which is draw 1 card, then choose 1 card in your hand and up to 3 Shadow Dragon extra cards in your drop area and place them at the bottom of your deck in any order. So in a nutshell, this one, it's a draw 1 bottom decker card from your hand, and then you can choose up to 3 extra cards in your drop area, but with the up to, if we've got cards in there that we want to keep, and in a sec I'll get to why we might want to keep some extra cards there, then we don't have to choose any targets for the up to 3 in the drop area. But this is also good for us because if we get to the later side of the game and we've milled cards that we want to use later in the game and we can't immediately get them back, then we can put them back in deck, give ourselves resources for a later game, because this is a stall deck. We want to make sure we're managing our resources as best we can. Now, the Neg 7, I've never gotten off in testing, never expect to get it off, and it's a bonkers effect, but either way, I don't think it's a reliable win con. So it's a Neg 7. If your leader card is a Shadow Dragon card, choose up to 7 black Shadow Dragon cards with different character names in your hand and or drop area and play them. Obviously, playing them all from the drop area is super busted. If you're playing against blue, probably not great because they'll just shoot them all back to your hand, but then we've got them all back in hand, so happy days. But either way, you're better off utilizing your markers for spirit boosting as opposed to trying to save it up to get the Neg 7 skill off. Unless you just plan on going straight to turn 7 and dropping this for 7 energy and negging 7 markers off it, it's not a reliable win con, at least in my humble opinion. Now, we'll move on and cover the extra cards first. Now, this one I'll cover first off. This is one that we want to see early game. So this is an activate main / battle and it's a limit 1. All of these are limit 1, so they're hard once per turns. This one is, if your leader card is a Shadow Dragon card, you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and choose one of 2 things. Either grab a Shadow Dragon extra card from among them, add it to your hand, shuffle your deck, or if we don't have a Unison card in play, we can grab 1 Toa Resonance of Shadow among them, and play it with a marker on it, and then shuffle the rest of the cards into the deck. So as far as your opening hand goes, what we want to see from what we've covered so far, we want to see this, and we want to see this, or both of them, depending on what you get in your starting hand. Now, the next one I'll jump into is this one, so Ultimate Whirlwind Spin. This one is probably better to use defensively than it is during your turn, and I'll explain why. So the skill is, if your leader card is black, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add up to 1 black Shadow Dragon card, battle card among them to your hand, then shuffle your deck. Then you may choose 1 black Shadow Dragon card in your hand and discard it. If you do, up to 1 of your leader cards gets 1k power for the turn. So the really good thing about this is that it effectively achieves the same thing that a Sensu Bean achieves. That being, it acts as 1 extra combo during each defensive attack that you have to try and defend. Because on the unawakened side, we're going to go from 10k to 11k. So if we have to out-combo 15, it's just 1 5k combo. Vice versa, on the awakened side, we go from 15 to 16. If we have to out-combo 20k, it's just 1 5k combo to get to 21. So very similar to what a Sensu Bean will do. Not exactly a Sensu Bean because stacking it is not going to achieve much, but, well, we can't stack it anyway because it's a hard limit 1. But still, it does make your defensive turns a lot easier, especially from an economic standpoint where you have to try and manage how many cards you have in hand, because this deck doesn't generate a huge amount of draw power, but it does, if you're doing things correctly, a lot of the cards replace themselves. Now we'll move on to the extra cards that can be incredibly disruptive. Now we'll cover this one first. This one's one of the SRs from the set, Ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet. Man, these names are tongue twisters. So the first thing is it's got a counterplay skill. If your opponent is playing a Unison card, they may either remove a marker from it for every 2 cards in their drop area and warp, or place it in their drop area instead of playing it. If they don't, your opponent can only attack 1 more time for the turn. So really great if your opponent is going straight to the beginning of their turn, dropping a Unison. We can give them that ultimatum of, do they waste the Unison that they've just played, or do they just attack once? So definitely something that you want to aim at when your opponent is playing a Unison at the beginning of a turn. If they're playing it at the end of the turn, it's, it's no use because they're just going to say, all right, I'll keep it in play, just won't attack. Now, the other side is the activate main/battle skill. It's your opponent chooses one of their battle cards with an energy cost less than the number of cards in their drop area and sends it to their warp. So this can, as we get further into the game and we're milling our opponent, hit things that are real big. The disadvantage is that it's your opponent's choice. So if they have multiple battle cards in play, we may not be able to hit the card that we want them to hit. Or if it's a battle card with barrier, obviously we can't hit that, it won't get around barrier. The plus side to that though is if your opponent has just 2 cards in play, one with barrier, one without, we want to hit the one without, they won't be able to choose the card with barrier because it's still our skill. So good, but it can be quite situational. So for that reason, I'm only running it at 3 for now, but it is still a very solid card. But it being specific to Unisons, it could be better. Now, my favorite card, or at least for now, my favorite card, is Ultimate Dragon Quake. So this is if your leader card is a Shadow Dragon card, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost greater than their current energy and send it to its owner's warp. At the end of the turn, play any cards sent to the warp by the skill to their owner's battle areas with their skills negated. And if your opponent has 15 or fewer cards in their deck, place them in their owner's drop area instead. So I love the fact that this is an activate battle because your opponent goes in real hard and goes in real tall, real quick and plays something real big that hasn't got barrier. We can just straight up get rid of it and they can combo their hand for game or something and get rid of it for free by spirit boosting. Or the other good synergy is if your opponent does have 2 battle cards that we can get rid of, then we can use Ultimate Dragon Quake to get rid of one, and then get rid of the second with this, only leaving your opponent with 1 choice. So sequencing things in different orders can work, but this card's bonkers. I love it. I love it. Now, the last card, this one is probably the most situational out of the lot that we have. So if it's your opponent has a Unison card in play, your opponent places the top card of their deck into their drop area. Your opponent may choose one of their Unison cards and remove 2 markers from it. If they don't, you draw a card and then choose one of your opponent's battle cards and send it to their warp. So this is good if you can get it off, but the problem is that it requires your opponent to have a Unison card in play, which, because that's part of the cost, can be situational. So this can be completely dead in hand, which I've had games where that's not good, really not good. But again, it's giving your opponent that choice of remove 2 markers from it or give me this. So good and bad things with it. The other bad thing is that it is a 2-cost card. So if we can't spirit boost it, it is quite expensive to play from an economic side of things. Now that wraps up the extra cards, so we'll jump into the battle cards. Now the first couple of things that I'll cover are the 1-drops. Now this 1-drop is the main one we want to see early game. Now all of them carry the same auto, or very much the same auto, with the exception of the super combo. And that's if your leader card is a Shadow Dragon card. When this card is played from hand or discarded by a Shadow Dragon card skill, you may look at the top card of your deck. If it's a black Shadow Dragon card, you may add it to your hand, otherwise place it at the bottom of your deck. So in a nutshell, if any of the ones that carry the same skill are discarded by a Shadow Dragon skill, or you play them from hand, you just reveal the top card. If it's a Shadow Dragon card, add it to hand. So this engine pretty much just keeps you being able to keep your hand size up and keep your resources up, because these cards are replacing themselves so long as you're utilizing their skills correctly and you're not, I guess, comboing them away too much. But the main thing with this one card is that it carries the same activate main/battle that your leader does on the awakened side. So when we want to be spirit boosting when we're unawakened, this will let us do it. And yeah, fantastic card. Next one I'll quickly describe is the Naturon, or the little piglet looking thing. Now this is slightly different, so it does still have that same skill, but instead of when it's played or discarded, it's just when it's discarded. Main reason being is when this card is played from the hand, with this first auto, is you choose up to one Shadow Dragon extra card in your drop area and add it back to your hand. So, I mean, if it's played from hand in this, it'd be effectively a 1-cost draw 2 card, because you play it, reveal top card, add it to hand, then use the other auto, grab something back from hand, and you're plussing. So that'd be a little bit too busted. Now, the last one is this Haze Shenron. This one is gonna proc off when you play it from hand or when it's discarded. But its main thing is it's got an activate main once per turn for 1 black. If your leader card is a Shadow Dragon card and you switch this card to rest mode, choose 1 black Shadow Dragon card with an energy cost of 3 or less in your hand and play it. For this, we have got 2 targets. We've got this Syn Shenron, which I'll get to in a sec, and we've got this Haze Shenron. So this Haze Shenron is going to be primarily our target for that skill, because the Syn Shenron has a skill to play it on its own. Same idea, when you play it or discard it, it'll get this skill off, but then with its other auto is when this card attacks, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, send it to its owner's warp, then switch this card to active mode at the end of the turn. And this is a 15k crit body with blocker, so again can help us be super defensive, has spot removal with no energy cap, so long as it doesn't have barrier and doesn't have any other form of inbuilt protection, we can get rid of it. So a great card to try and get out. Now moving on to this one, same idea with this auto down here. When it's played or discarded, reveal the top card, blah blah blah. Now this one is where it can play itself. So for a limit 1, so a hard once per turn for 1 black energy, if your leader card is a black Shadow Dragon card, when you remove a marker from a Unison card using a Spirit Boost skill, play this card from your hand and your opponent places the top card of their deck into their drop area. And this one is a 20k double strike body. So great if we want to go in with a lot of pressure, if we're getting to late game, or even if it's relatively early game and we're wanting to do this during our opponent's turn to have more energy during our turn, stuff like that, and it helps with that mill strategy. Now, the last battle card that carries that same skill is this absolutely bonkers negate. This is one of those cards where you look at it, you read it, and you think, what the hell is Bandai doing by printing something that's this busted? If it gets off, at least, it's just busted. So the first thing, it's a blocker. Next thing, its counter attack skill is you choose 1 card from your hand and discard it. So that is a cost to counter the attack. But then you negate the attack, play this card. If you played a card, your opponent can't attack for the turn unless they place the top 4 cards of their deck into their drop area each time. So it's just mill for days. Mill for days. The other thing is that during your opponent's turn, you reduce the energy cost of this card in your hand by 3. So it goes from being a 5 cost to a 2 cost. So it's basically a topo on steroids, or at least a topo for milling. And again, it carries that exact same skill. When you play this card from your hand or you discard it, blah 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 blah. So this is just bonkers for days. I'm expecting this card to be a quite expensive SR, because it's not, like, as far as this half of the skill goes, it is not leader locked at all, so you can chuck this in any deck. So Cooler Mill is going to see this and just, it's just stupid, but obviously this auto is only for this deck. Now the super combo. So this is a Sparking 5 super combo, gain 10k, draw a card, all your typical things. The interesting part is it's got a limit 1. When you Spirit Boost and remove a marker using that skill, you can place this card under your Unison card and then draw a card and add a marker back to the card. So a good way to keep your markers up, but the downside is you are losing a super combo by doing that. So depending on how you're going to play it, this can be really, really good for either situation, but for this deck strategy, this is probably the best super combo for the deck, at least in my opinion. Now, to round off our battle cards, we'll go into the tech choices. So this is the first tech choice. Unfortunately, it being X-Evolve and a Haze Shenron, we can't do it on this because this one here is a Haze Shenron Xeno, so different character name. If we could evolve over it, that would be busted. But what we're primarily having this in here for is this skill. So if your leader card is a Shadow Dragon card and you choose one Shadow Dragon card in your hand and discard it, when this card attacks or is used in combo, choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode with an energy cost greater than their current energy and KO it. So the great thing is that this will kill something mid-battle, or can kill something mid-battle, and then it will proc off most of the effects that happen when a card is discarded. Because as we read here, when this card is discarded by a Shadow Dragon card skill, it doesn't have to be a black Shadow Dragon card skill. So again, great synergy with the deck here. Now, for counters, we've got 2 Supreme Kai in here. 2's fine, honestly. I see it when I need to see it. The other thing is that because we're not warping super heavy, we might take a bit of time to get to the 3 cards in warp, and we don't exactly warp much cards ourselves. So, still, solid negate. Then we've got 2 Brainwash No More. Not really much explanation needed for this. If you're playing black, this is probably one of the best cards to run, both for its Overwhelm skill and for its Activate Battle skill. And then the secret rare of the deck, which is, like, this deck is great because you can really run whatever secret rare you want as far as it's going to work in the deck energy-wise and you can actually play it. But the great thing about this is that this card is also treated as black in all areas. So it being a black Shadow Dragon card, this secret rare is searchable. And this secret rare is absolutely busted. So you combo with it for an auto at the end of the battle. When you combo with this card, you play this card from your drop area. If you do, choose any number of your opponent's leader cards and battle cards and unison cards equal to or less than their current energy, ignoring barrier, and switch them to rest mode. So now that this is searchable in this, or it was searchable in the other Syn Shenron deck anyway, but still an absolutely bonkers one, and it's a blocker, so what's not to love? I don't foresee the activate main skill coming up because you got to tap 4 energy for it, and there's plenty of ways to get around that nowadays, but still, kill an opponent's entire turn if they go super wide. What's not to love? Now, the last things to really round up are just the last couple of extra cards, which don't really need much explanation. Petrification, because we want to be able to deal with barrier skills, or skills on cards with barrier. Power Burst, main reason so that we can grab these 1-drops back, but also if we're awakening at high life, it's a way for us to get more resources into our hand with the sparking skill. And then if the game goes way too long, we've got good old 10-drop Fu, because who doesn't love 10-drop Fu? So, in a nutshell, to kind of break down what this deck wants to achieve, it is definitely a control/mill strategy. So the way I've figured out playing this deck the best is utilizing the spirit boosting engine to be disruptive during your opponent's turn. Let them put in the work to build their board, and you just utilize your spirit boosting engine to manipulate or to interact with your opponent's board. You don't really have to worry about building a too big a board yourself, because, you know, we can get this body on board super easily, we can get this body on board super easily. If the game goes too long, you know, we've got this and this. But with the fact that we're milling super hard with this and then gradually milling throughout the entire game, we can mill the opponent out. I've gotten a few games in where I've gotten super close, but primarily controlling the game state is what this deck seems to be able to do really well. It can run a little bit of a hard basket when we don't get the Tower Unison out, because then we can't Spirit Boost, and we can still activate these for their cost, but it's nowhere near as economic. But overall, it is a fun deck. It is hard to get your head wrapped around, but if you're anyone who's played like Dark Broly or Invoker, those kind of resource management style decks, I think you'll click onto this pretty well. Anyway, that's it. This has been a fairly lengthy video. There's a lot of moving parts in this deck. If you got through to the end of it, I'll give you the sickest high five ever. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment, shoot us a message, whatever you want to do. Yell, scream profusely. I don't mind. Anyway, hope you enjoyed, and peace out.